So, okay.
I think I'll just try to keep it.
I think you are on. The live stream is on.
It
It's being
says,
sent to YouTube.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'll just try to keep it.
I think you are on. The live stream is on.
Okay. All right. It
It's being
says,
sent to YouTube.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I can hear myself. I think I'll just try to keep it.
I think you are on. Yeah, it's echoing. It's echoing.
Okay, I've muted. I don't know if it will mute for the live streaming too. I don't know. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Is it still on YouTube? Because I've just closed this. I don't know if I'm new to it, to be honest. I was just exploring it. I think it's time, but let me text me and see.
So 6 people are in the waiting room.
Oh, I can't even see. Okay, so it's not.
Okay.
Let me
Yeah.
text and see.
So I'm on a meeting panel B, and then I had to run and do this. So maybe I can do 45 minutes.
Yes, please, that's fine. Hi. Okay,
Hello,
let's go on now. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. We'll just go on now then. Hopefully you will join. Okay. Okay, so the webinar has started. Okay. See 4 attendees, they are now joining. Let's just give some few minutes to see if Neil will join. I've just texted him. I think we should start, and then whenever he joins, then since we haven't got enough time. So, hi everybody, good afternoon. It's so good to see you and to meet you, Madina. My name is Madeline Akwesiabuku, and I'm the founder for Anijie Global Foundation, and we are the organizers of African Youth Gender and Climate Conference. And this year we decided to do something different by having this webinar where we can connect with a larger reach instead of the in-person events which we normally organize in November, which we're also doing in November this year. And thank you all for coming on board to share your perspective on the interconnectedness of the SDGs and then with the climate change. I'd like to we are live on YouTube now. And thank you to all who have joined the participants. Please leave your questions while we continue with the conversations, and then we'll address them at the end of the conversation. So I would like you guys to introduce yourselves. Like I mentioned, my name is Madeline, and I'm so privileged to have you young leaders on board with me today. So please introduce yourself. I'll start with Madina because I'm seeing her on my screen first.
Thank you so much. Hello, Madeline, and hello, everyone. My name is Madina Jubilate Kimaro. I am a founder of Madina Climatic Organization in Tanzania. It is a youth-led organization that is officially registered, and it focuses on biodiversity conservation, forest conservation, and climate change awareness. Our programs and projects are particularly taking place in the Northern Circuit of Tanzania, meaning Arusha, Tanga, Kilimanjaro, and Manyara. And this is because of the research that we have conducted in the year 2023 that shows that the Northern Circuit regions in Tanzania are at the highest risk of being affected than other regions in the country. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be a speaker, and I can't wait to share my knowledge with others.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Madina, for joining us. And there's so much you are doing, but we'll delve into it later. Gloria, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us. My name is Gloria Jare. I'm an environmentalist and agri-food system advocate. Basically, my work over the past 5 to 6 years has really focused on youth education and youth engagement in climate change or in climate action, and also implementing community-based projects focused on food, climate, and nature. And I have also worked collectively with grassroots communities, mobilizing their voices to represent them on large platforms like COP, trying to influence policies and ensure their concerns or whatever feedback gathered is also shared on such platforms. I'm very excited to be here to talk about climate change because this is what I've been doing over the past years. This is something I can relate to personally and also, professionally as well. So thank you very much, Anijie Global and Modeling, for the invitation. And I can't wait to start or dive into the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And it's nice to meet you. Maxwell, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maxwell Bigani. I am an ecosystem developer, and I work with a number of CSOs, and also I consult on a number of intersection issues or issues of intersection between climate change, environmental sustainability, technology, and then education. These are areas that I'm particularly interested in, and I've worked over the years implementing projects from grassroots level. I've also been involved in policy advocacy and also policy influence. Yeah, so I think that would be for now. And I work with a number of organizations, both at the local level and then also at the regional level. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is yet to join us. He said he's having issues with the internet, so we hope to have him shortly. So Anijie Global Foundation, we are youth-led nonprofits where we empower young people through education and leadership, and we focus on the global goals. And at the moment, as we are all aware, the Sustainable Development Goals, which is the SDG Agenda 2030. And we have decided to focus on the 3 thematic areas, even though the SDGs are very much interlinked. So we focus on education, gender equality, and climate action. So today, this is a session for our in-person conference because we have an annual event we have, which is the African Youth Gender and Climate Conference. Why do we have this conference? It's just to bring young people together to discuss the challenges that comes with climate action with a gender inclusiveness or with a gender lens. So we are so privileged and honored to have in this year's event. We are proudly supported by British Council Ghana. Without wasting much time, we'll just dig in. I think Nee has just joined. Nee, can you hear us, please? Is your internet better? Okay. I'll just assume he's still not connected well. Okay, so we'll just dig in to the issue of climate change. So we as an organization, that is Anijie Global Foundation, we address climate change from the grassroots. Normally, when we hear about climate change, people believe that it is for experts. You know, you can easily talk about gender equality, women empowerment, and you have everybody jumping on it. But the moment you mention climate change, some people think that it doesn't concern them and it's for certain type of people, policymakers or people that are only researchers or into climate change. So I want to ask you young leaders here, if you had to explain climate change to a layman, an average person, what is climate change and why should we all be involved in it? Not just for the expert, like I mentioned earlier. Why is it that climate change affects all of us, but then people don't understand it? So if you had the opportunity, what would you say to somebody to make it easy for them to understand climate change? I'll start with Maxwell because I can see him first.
All right, thank you very much. And so the issue of climate change and breaking it down, it looks like a complexified theory or understanding in terms of talking about climate change. People think it's more scientific than reasoning. But then I believe that the onus is on us as young people to be able to break down this complexified strategy. So climate change, in essence, is as a result of what we do as humans. The natural cycle of the earth or the world is being changed and then causing harm to us. And these natural cycles that are being destroyed are as a result of our human-induced activities, which people call anthropogenic activities, which is virtually the same as saying that our activities is causing that change. Often I cite this example when I talk about climate change. I'm like, I ask people, do you know that the Sahara Desert was once a large mass of water body? And they go like, then why is it now desert? So that is where I start the conversation from. That over the years, a lot of things have happened. And as a result of that, it has changed the landscape of that. And that is as a result of climate. And climate change ordinarily would have occurred. If you look at science, it occurs. But then now it is occurring at a very fast rate because of what we are doing. Our activities are causing it to speed up, and then we are killing ourselves in terms of that. So normally, this is how I go through on a level of explaining climate change to just anybody to understand. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that submission. Gloria, how would you explain climate change to an average person?
Well, I think it's not even far-fetched from what Maxwell has shared. I think it's about time when we think about climate change, we think about it as human-induced. We think about it as we contributing to something, contributing to a disorder in the world, or in our weather conditions. Anytime I'm talking about climate change with like people at the grassroots or like children or people in schools, I just go by the basic extreme weather conditions. I just ask them, have you noticed that these days, like when it rains, it's really extreme to the extent that you have a lot of like, let's say flooding cases, people lose their lives. I mean, of course, these things have been happening like time past, but now the extremeness of it and exactly what Maxwell said, the frequency of it has really doubled up, which shows that there's something more that is contributing to the changes in our weather pattern or conditions, which does not make it normal and it makes it a problem or a challenge now. So when you think about climate change, it's nothing extra, but in reality, it's just the extreme conditions, weather conditions you are experiencing now that it was never there before. Even as a child, I don't remember my parents or people I used to live with complaining so much about the sun. It felt like we had like a perfect temperature, or when it's rainy season, we can easily tell, get ready. When it's like, but now we can't even predict when it's supposed to shine, it rains, and it rains extremely, like, or severely, and you are like, what is happening? So these are like basic things around us physically that can help us appreciate the concept of climate change better.
Amazing. I think Nee has mentioned he's having issues with his internet, so he would join without his camera turned on. So Nee, please introduce yourself and then share your perspective on how you would explain climate change and why we need to take initiative to an average person.
Well, thank you very much, Maud, for the opportunity. It's really great to be here, and also to share the platform with my people I consider friends, Maxwell and Gloria. In the last couple of years, I've been working in development, started when I was 18 years. And I've had the opportunity to work in some organizations like UNDP, Impact Hub Accra. Maxwell and I were also colleagues at SYND. So I've been very active in the youth development, but also development space, and in a long time. These days, I'm more focused on cities and how cities can work and adapt to climate. In that, along those lines, I'm leading a inclusive climate action work at Transform Transport Accra, where we see opportunities within not only moving by car, but also seeing bicycles as a good opportunity to meet mobility needs. So that's a little about me. So climate change, I mean, Maxwell and Gloria has pretty much explained what it's about. But, growing up, things were not the same as it is now. The what? Can you hear me?
Hello, Ni. We are streaming.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I think it's better now.
All right. So I was saying earlier, please let me know if you lose me again. So I was saying earlier that things are not the same as it was. Growing up, we had, for example, during Homo War, we had more rain. These days, around the time of August, which is Homo War, sometimes there's no rain, and even rains very heavily. Usually, it's just the drizzles. So, I mean, the weather has changed so much. For most of us in Accra, we see it in the form of flooding. But
just to confirm, is it just me who can't hear Ni? Can we all hear Ni from our side, please?
I think he just dropped off.
He just dropped off, but I could hear him. Yeah.
I could hear him too.
Okay. Yeah, I think that Ni would have to reposition himself. Yes. So Madina, please tell us, how would you explain climate change to an
Okay, thank you for the question. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to explain on the perspective of Tanzania, how it will be easy to explain to a person for him or her to understand the concept of climate change. Well, in Tanzania, the employment is a bit of a problem for many people, it's youth or the older generation. So on my side, it will be easier for me to explain to a person about climate change when I relate it with the concept of employment opportunities, showing a person that it does not mean just because you are in the maybe agricultural sector or mining sector or tourism sector, that means that you should not engage yourself in climate action, because climate change is a pressing issue and it is a global issue that is affecting each and every kind of place. And so an easy way to explain to that person on climate change is showing that through the effects of climate change, we are all affected, and this can even result to the fall of the industries that we are taking part in, be it tourism, mining, fishing, or agriculture. They are all impacted by climate change due to the severe effects that are happening. And so I feel that it will be easier to explain to a person once we relate to something that is very important to them, because showing them that through the economic fall, it will lead to poverty to many people in Tanzania, maybe, because in my country, we see that agriculture is the backbone of Tanzania, meaning that almost 60% of households in Tanzania depend on agriculture. So facing these people who are taking part in the agricultural industry and showing them that because of climate change, it can lead to the drying of crops or crops being washed away by heavy rains, meaning that many people in Tanzania will become poor. The people who are in the industry that deals with food and production will get challenges. So it will be easier to show them once we show them that climate change will result to the fall of economic development, not only for one person, but for the nation at large.
Amazing. I think you've sort of answered the question I was going to ask you earlier. How was your personal journey as the founder of, is it Medina Climate Organization, your advocacy with establishing your NGO? How has it shaped your understanding between climate change and then with the SDGs?
Thank you for the question. First, I would like to explain my background first before establishing Medina Climatic Organization.
Yes.
So I began taking part in climate action 2 years ago. And in these 2 years, I've been a UNICEF advocate in climate action and resilience. And I've also been the global advocacy champion for the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. Through these two positions that I had, I was able to acquire several skills that shaped me in this climate action space. So taking part in these activities, I realized that, yes, I had a very big opportunity to attend international meetings, including the Africa Climate Summit, the COP28, the high-level dialogue on nutrition financing. These were all high-level meetings that I had the chance to meet leaders from Tanzania and from other parts of the world and share with them what is happening in the country. But coming to look at a wider view in the year 2023, where my team and I conducted research in Tanzania, we came to realize that Tanzania, the Northern Circuit region in Tanzania is highly affected because of tourism. We see that in Tanzania, tourism is one of the leading industries because of the national parks and the game reserves that we have in the country. And in the Northern Circuit regions, in 4 regions in Tanzania, we see that tourism is the main source of employment for many young people. So coming to see that tourism is highly affected by climate change, because we've seen in the year 2023, even in Kenya, we saw a lot of wild animals dying because of drought and the increase of heat. So coming to look into this, we thought, why not establish an organization? So as the founder of Medina Climatic Organization, we saw that how are SDGs incorporated, how are SDGs interconnected with the organization. Through our objectives, although this is another question coming, but through the objectives that we have, we are able to ensure that we are promoting other sustainable development goals. We are promoting SDG 13 for climate action. We are promoting SDG 6 for clean water and sanitation. We are promoting SDG 8 for decent work and economy, so that people can also benefit from climate action. We do not want to show people that climate change is only a problem, but we want to show them that through climate action, we can do programs that are able to ensure that we are protecting the environment in our country, but also people are able to develop economically, to be empowered, and to get several opportunities for them to develop as children and young people.
Yes, thank you so much. I like the fact that she said you are not just promoting the effects, but then the opportunities also that comes with it. Now go to Gloria. You are agri-food system advocates. Okay, so what inspired you to venture into that space, and how do you see the intersection of sustainable agriculture, food security, climate change literally playing role in Africa or the world in general?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Maudlin. I have a background in terms of my undergraduate studies in agriculture, and I mean, reading agriculture, it first started with an interest in, post-harvest issues, where we had like a lot of food waste, and then a transition to a moment where I was in the Volta region. I lived there almost a year or more, where we worked on farms with local farmers. I really remember going to a rice farm continuously for a couple of times. And then we noticed how weather conditions like extreme rainfall, even though rice likes water, extreme rainfall affected the lands of these farmers. And then also, I think it reduced their yields and all of that. In that moment and all of those experiences, even though I was young, I was really asking so many questions, and I really wanted to learn more. I remember my father telling me that, oh, go and study and come and help us build the agriculture sector. And today it really makes so much sense to me as to how it has shaped my passion within the space. So in all of this, and then also getting to experience or work within the environmental space, I was able to like connect the dots. I was like, so this is it. This is really it. The way we produce food does not promote environmental sustainability, and the way we also live our life can also our lives can also affect the way we produce food, like vice versa, how the environment can affect agriculture, and how agriculture can also affect the environment, both negatively and positively. So in that moment was like the spark and the drive to explore this sector and see how, with my strong environmental interest as well, can promote environmental sustainability through our food system. And these are like some of the, or one of the drivers as to which I'm here in the UK to study my master's in food and development. Now, I would want to connect this to the second question you asked me, that how does that play out here in Ghana? To be fair, we have seen that so many systems that we have advocated over the years, especially within the agriculture sector, has failed us to some extent, like this modern way of producing food, where we've depended so much on chemical inputs, where we've realized that these chemical inputs like wash over, pollute our water bodies, our atmosphere. The way we produce food in a way where we clear a whole vast of land into a bare land before we cultivate again, disturbing the soil, which is the largest carbon sink in the world, cutting down trees, which play an essential role in the whole issue of climate change, that is tackling climate change. All of these things shows like the existing gaps within Ghana's agriculture system or food system, right? And so in terms of, if we really as a nation want to address the issue of climate change, and we are considering all aspects, we want to take a 360 approach, then we should also consider food, the food and agriculture sector. We should also consider restructuring or revising some of the policies we have adopted, policies where our farmers, our local farmers, are not even trained on how to produce sustainably. They don't even understand some of the pros and cons. Sometimes they do, but these policies are still supporting them in using agrochemicals and, still sticking to the old practices. I think it's about time we revise that bit of our food and agriculture sector and be able to develop like tailor-made solutions, to be able to develop policies that will ensure that we transition into a food system that has the environment centered. So in this, I'm talking about like policies that thinks about the environment first before even the food, and when you do that, eventually you realize that you are not just protecting the environment, but you're protecting lives, you're protecting the nature around us. Of course, you are creating jobs, green jobs, right? And then you are giving us some form of like there's like a breath, a new freshness, in terms of what we eat, how we eat our food and all of that. And even in terms of our culture, adopting some of the traditional ways of doing things in the past that were more sustainable. We intend to incorporate all of these things into the picture. So for me, what I would say here, to sum it all up, we need to get to a point as a country where our policies has the environment centered in our quest to tackle climate change, especially within the food and agriculture sector. if we have this centered, we are not at a loss. Businesses will never be at a loss, because it means that anytime nature is at the center of things, we will always come back to it, because we also humans are natural beings, or like are nature prone. So you as a business will always make money, because we'll always come back to it. You know, you are creating jobs that are like sustainable for a very long time, because young people will tend to find a place always within the space, because we will always depend on it. So I think that this is how it should play out, a transition away from this. And it should be urgent, because already Food and Agriculture Organization is reporting that the modern way of producing food now is contributing 34% to greenhouse gases. I think it's very, very significant. And it's about time we look at that to also address issues of malnutrition, issues of food insecurity, and so many more. So for food system and for climate change, I think the central point should be, okay, let's place nature, or let's place the environment at the center, and then let's tackle this to ensure that we bridge all of these gaps we are seeing. I hope this is much more.
Yes, that takes me to Maxwell. Maxwell, I want to know, as an educator and a tech enthusiast, how do you see the role of technology and education in addressing climate change and achieving the sustainable development goals in general? I like that Gloria mentioned, and I couldn't wait to come to you to mention the tech and the education bits. How is this so much important, and how do you see it playing a role in addressing climate change?
Okay. Even to take us back to, and I think most of the points were also highlighted by my very good friend and colleague Gloria. Technology, historically, we all know technology has transformed our lives one way or the other. Ordinarily, we wouldn't have access to have this platform to reach a number of people, but then you realize that the advent of technology is giving us access. And the beautiful thing about technology is the emerging technologies. Every now and then there are thought-provoking technologies, and technologies are being used to solve problems. So technology in itself is cross-cutting. It can solve quite a number of issues. So within the climate space, there are emerging technologies coming up in solving issues. In fact, even the technology transfer in the renewable energy space, EVs and all that, falls under the category of technologies. In technologies as well, there is the information technology, and then there is also sustainable technology. So the information technology, it's already what some of us are really into: information communication technologies, how we can leverage information, get access to content. If we are talking about climate change, where do we get information about climate change? The advent of technology gives us access to platforms, even video tutorials, and all these open access platforms or content that we have to enrich ourselves in understanding the issues of climate change. And these sustainable technologies are also informed and based on the information technologies, because based on this information, sustainable technologies are coming. And if I say sustainable technologies, technologies that do not harm the environment, technologies that places environmental sustainability as key.
Yeah.
If you also go back in history, you realize that when some of these technologies started in, the issues of environment wasn't at the core of it, but now the issues of the environment is core of every technology. In fact, you would even realize that now most of the big techs and all these high technology companies all have their environmental sustainability report on how they are also contributing in solving some of the menace that we have caused over the years. And of course, the technology space also acknowledges the fact that they also contributed one way or the other to climate change, and also a form of environmental distress. So technology, it's very broad and cross-cutting. But in the area of education, I think that one of the key things that have helped is leveraging on open access, leveraging on open technologies like edX, some of these platforms that it helps people to engage with the content that we have under the principles of open access and then also transparency. So that's how technology has been used. And a case in point is where we organize workshops like what we are doing. Also, some schools, we give them access to content offline and then online. So one of the offline portals that we use to disseminate some of this information is the t-shirt that I'm wearing right now, which is called the Keywix. So the Keywix is actually an offline educational tool that have access to information or books. Ordinarily, it has to be online, but this time it is offline. And that technology is really helping a lot by going into the rural communities for them to have access to climate information, environmental sustainability information, and also to have access to YouTube videos and other TED Talks on environmental sustainability. Now, in terms of education, as an educator, I also leverage on some of these existing platforms. So there's no need for me to reinvent the wheel once these available technologies are available. Then we have to build on and look at how important we can use it, and then bridge the digital divide. And if you would agree with me that the global South, we have quite huge digital divide, and we need to also bridge it by leveraging on some of these open access to be able to talk about the issues of climate change, the issues of environmental sustainability, etc., etc. So these are, and all what I have said is in tandem with the achieving the sustainable development goals, because technology becomes like a tap for us to be able to achieve. It's a means and a mechanism to achieve all this. So even within the climate space in the Paris Agreement, technology transfer and development is key, and also it's a means of implementing the NDCs and then the Paris Agreement to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. So this is just a brief on the importance of technology holistically, and also narrowing it down to environmental sustainability, climate change, and sustainable development goals.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Just to update our participants, please feel free to share your questions and then we'll address them right after the conversation. And also to our panelists, please know that there are a lot of people on here who are new to climate change or the climate conversation. So there are various terminologies like the NDCs. You might have to break it down so they can easily understand those ones. Thank you. So Ni, we'll have to shift Ni to the waste management and urbanism. Ni, are you here? Are you here with us, please?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you.
Yes, Ni. So I want to know, how can tactical urbanism initiatives for waste management and inclusive climate action be scaled up to a broader impact across African cities? Or yes, African cities, because we are focusing on Africa today.
All right. So I think before I give my submission, it would be good to explain some of these terms.
Yes.
So tactical urbanism is basically small approaches to achieve our sustainability challenges. So for example, segregation of waste in cities, so that, for example, we can have plastic, we can have papers, we can have organic waste. So micro initiatives within cities on different things related to our waste sustainability streams that we can deal with. An example is also cycling. You know, one of the things that I always say is that the challenge with Ghana's transportation challenges is, it's not as if there's not been solutions to solve it. In the last couple of years, we've had STC, we've had Ayalolo, we've had 4 buses. You know, when it comes to meeting our mobility needs while also trying to travel low carbon, there's been different initiatives, mass transit, like I've mentioned, that will work. But the fact is that we don't have good managers, and public-sized goods often are not well managed in most African cities. So how do we think of smaller initiatives? Like, for example, redesigning infrastructure so that we can ride bicycles, so that if I'm moving from Ayinensa to Medina, I can easily ride. So these are examples of tactical transport initiatives. On the question of how it can be scaled, we do need to expand research. We need to see existing gaps so that the initiatives that we lead are based on research, based on data, and based on things that are actualities on the ground.
Yeah.
So that's one of it. Definitely, for every action, research is important. Recently, I've seen that there's been a journal focused on African transport research that we can check out, but they just launched it, and we are seeing growing publication on transport initiatives in Africa. But we need more of these to expand research related to, initiatives that help solve sustainability issues while also creating opportunities to, for example, move around to deal with our waste challenge. And the second one is innovation. We need to drive innovation at scale. One of the things I've noticed about the innovation industry in Ghana and extensively in Africa is it's very much focused on, we are startup incubation, and most ideas or projects do not lead to building tangible, Maxwell talked about tangible tech solutions to deal with the issue. So people will talk about, having to separate transport, or for example, this separate waste, or for example, this transport challenges that we have. How many people are, for example, helping to design projects related to bike sharing, more tangible things on the ground. And I think that's where innovation in Africa needs to go. There's a lot of incubator support, startup support, incubation ideas, but they don't often move into tangible things. And the ones that are move into tangible stages, just a lack of, financial support. We need an African venture capital economy to help support some of these startups. Maxwell coordinates the Green Entrepreneurs program that he may talk about. But people are doing amazing, regardless of the fact that we need to move at scale. And how do we make sure that we find the right finance? And one of the things that these days I've been really thinking about is, an autonomous African financial architecture, because most of the finance that comes from the global north is often tied to something, an interest.
Yeah.
And how do we design African capital? How do we design African finance to the benefit of Africans, for Africans, and for us to move at scale to address some of our challenges? The last part, I think, is cross-partnerships. There's a lot of experiences that we can learn from different countries that are have pilot programs that we can learn from, case studies that we can learn from. For example, people, when I talk about making Accra bike friendly, we often say, how do we make Accra bike friendly in the state of our roads? So, how do we transform our roads? But there are examples of countries that have transformed part of their road infrastructure, which is car dependent, into allowing for cycling, like Israel. When I was in Israel, they've transformed a lot of their infrastructure, road infrastructure, to allow for cycling. And there's a lot of course learning if Africa would want to partner with the global north. These are examples of cross partnerships and learnings that we can benefit from and move away from the interest-oriented kind of partnership. That in the end, it's not at the interest of Africa. So yeah, these are things I can think of now. And yeah, over to you, and happy to speak more.
Yes, and that takes me to the next question. In your experience, how do we, what are some of the effective strategies we can include as Africans, or the knowledge we Africans have? Because you mentioned that sometimes in terms of even the finance, when they bring it on board, they have their own agenda. So how do we include our own strategies in these kind of conversations, or in these modern climate approaches?
So one of the things, thank you, it's a really great question. One of the things I've been thinking about is these days is how do you balance, we are in a world that, so for example, when you look at this sustainability space, unfortunately, the economy and the attention is driven towards things like ESG. The market itself and the global architecture of our world is favorable to African indigenous and African
Sorry to
knowledge
interrupt.
system.
Sorry to interrupt. Please explain ESG for the average person listening.
Oh, thank you. So ESG is basically environmental social governance. It's a framework used by government, used by companies to address issues related to environment. It's a sort of a guidance framework and has different principles to it. So that's ESG. So yeah, like I was saying, unfortunately, like the global market and taste, the global taste for things is related to non-African things. And the question is, how do we balance, brokering African solutions in the midst of a global market, a world that is focused on taste around ESG and all of these things, carbon markets and all of these things. So it's a really difficult question for all of us. But I think that for many of us, we need to find a balance in every space that we find to promote African knowledge systems. For example, Gloria works in agriculture, and these days I've heard her write and speak about agroecology.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ni.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Hi, Ni.
Yeah,
Yes,
I don't
Ni.
know where I ended, but I
Yeah, your line was okay. Okay, I think
okay. So yeah, I mean, let me end with this. I was trying to finish off, so I wasn't sure. Yeah. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that in whatever space that we work, we have to try and promote African knowledge system. For example, Gloria works in agriculture. These days, she's speaking a lot about agroecology. But these are examples of African knowledge systems that we use to address agricultural challenges. How do we think about things related to earth architecture and how to use it in modernized building systems? How do we adapt it to modern forms? So yeah, tech. How do we adapt to tech? How do we make sure that we use AI, for example, to talk about African indigenous sustainable solutions? So these are things that I can think of.
Thank you so much, Ni. That takes me to Madina. How has your work with Madina Climate Organization influenced your perspective on the role of grassroots organizations in addressing global challenges like climate change? Ni mentioned, yes, sorry.
Thank you. So as the founder of Madina Climate Organization, we have this perspective where we see that grassroots organizations are the key to achieve development. And how is this? It's because grassroots organizations are the one that can conduct extensive research within the country, because they are able to go into deeper regions in the country where people cannot easily reach, and provide the necessary data that is needed by several NGOs globally or agencies that they can use and support in policy development. But we also see that even those policies that are developed by the national and international agencies and NGOs are implemented by the grassroots community, by the grassroots organizations in the local communities. But we also see that grassroots organizations also work with the local community hand in hand in making sure there's cultural preservation. And by this, I can take an example. Through our organization, when we were conducting the launching of the forest project in Meru Forest Plantation in Arusha, when we went there, we saw that the people who were living near that forest already are practicing agroforestry, meaning that they see there's a need to make sure that we are preserving the forest, but how can they benefit as well from the forest? So they were practicing agroforestry even before we reached there. So because as a grassroots organization, we see that the community already have certain practices that they have been doing for a very long time that also help in the conservation of maybe the forest, maybe water. And so as the grassroots community, it is easy to make sure that we are upholding those practices that they have been doing for a very long time in ensuring that we are protecting our vital ecosystems.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. Gloria, I want to know, how can we integrate youth and women voices in decision-making processes when it comes to climate action? And with you focus more on agri-food, how can we include youth voices in climate or climate smart agriculture and food systems in general?
Hi, Madeline. Was this to me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I think I didn't hear my name. Yeah, so you were talking about how we bring on board like women and young people, right? In the whole conversation about. I think, can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear
All
you.
right. Okay, awesome. First off, let me just say this, that let me give this scenario. In a house where like you have, I don't know if you've seen like these kids, babies videos where like whatever their mommy says over time or whatever their parents says, like say in the house over time, they will be on their own and then they start whispering the same words, and you wonder how they picked all of these things up. I take a lot of inspiration from some of these things in the sense that if you want a child to be, or if you want young people to be at the forefront of issues, I think you need to work with them into rooms where you deliberate on solutions related to some of these issues. You need to carry them along, even if they don't understand the terminologies, they don't understand the structures, the in-depth structures involved in whatever situation that is happening. I think in that moment is where they also learn and understand on the journey. You see, and that's one of the things that's with our culture and with our way of life, it secludes us from being problem solvers, because when issues happen, young people are sidelined, women are sidelined, and they're like, let the older people do it. Let the men with the experience, let these people be at the forefront of it. But no, in the next couple of years, you are not there, and we have to face these problems. So my quest here is that young people and women should be carried along the journey. It doesn't matter if they don't have the experience, they don't have the understanding, they don't know what it takes to be there. Let them be there so that they learn, because the task ahead is so huge that we don't even have time to wait for young people to go through all the phases or stages of life before they get into solving some of these problems. They need to be carried along. So that's my first request, that young people should be carried along the journey of one, negotiating, especially even in rooms like if you have to sit with like ministers, if you have to sit with key policy makers and stakeholders, let them join in those conversations. Even if they don't understand, over time, they would understand and pick up. They would develop their own innovative solutions that is even better than what the older folks are used to. Another thing too that I have noticed is very essential on this journey is capacity building. I cannot emphasize so much. Like, it's so true, it's so real that even me myself, at any point where my capacity is built, either through an online program, a fellowship, or whatever it is, you see the ripple effect in my line of work, in how I deliver. It gets better each and every time. And that is what we need. Women have been sidelined for a very long time over the years. And it's now that we are coming out, we've been given a platform. So in giving us a platform on that journey, still build our capacity to be able to meet the needs of this generation and that of the next generation. These two things are very, very important to me, because I think it's one of, like, let's say, the low-hanging fruits, or like the basic steps into integrating us into this whole global issue, helping us develop local-based solutions, helping us develop solutions that are like more sustainable, solutions that we can even understand ourselves, and our next generation can even pick up and run with it. These are very important. And I would also say this last thing, that there should be some form of intergenerational relationship, the older folks should loosen up a bit for us. We are young people. We will flow at any point in time, but we definitely need guidance. That's why I kept emphasizing on carry us along the journey, give us the platform and help us learn. So please, mentorship is very, very important. And that's where the intergenerational relationship comes to play, because we need that to be able to promote the sustainable environment we envision. We need that to drive climate action. We need that to restructure systems. Noy made mention of how some of these Western programs or, Western initiatives are like agenda driven, and it affects we here in Africa. There's a need for us to have that intergenerational bond so that we can change the narrative, so that we can lead ourselves as a continent. I think this can go a long way if we really want to contribute in addressing climate change, contribute in addressing food insecurity, and some of these issues we find. You realize that it's just because of the disconnect, just because of our high dependency on Western culture and other things is the reason why we are lagging behind and we are not able to address some of these issues at the grassroots level. So this will be what I would want to share basically on this particular question.
Thank you so much, Gloria. I'll go to Maxwell on this. You sort of mentioned some bits, but I want to ask Maxwell, how can we improve climate change education to make it more engaging and actionable for young people? Because like Gloria said, we need to carry young people along, but then also we don't want a situation where young people are invited to tick the boxes. We just come and sit at the table and then we don't have any knowledge on it. So I like that Gloria also mentioned capacity building. So my question to Maxwell, how can we improve climate change education and to make it more engaging and very actionable for young people to get involved in?
Okay, thank you very much. So I think what we can do is to first have an approach. All right, an approach that would be away from the traditional ones, that traditional classroom setting or brick and mortar system that we've been using. We should redefine how information is being shared. So I'll just put them in three categories. So the first one is I think we should go beyond brick and mortar and look at adapting and adopting this knowledge in a local context. So what am I saying? This once you want to go into education, the people should be pre-info. You should know who your audience are. You should know what works best for them and not use the one-side approach. Sometimes it is more relatable to have a table discussion, a round-table discussion, other than a lecture style and all that. So I think we should look at localization of the climate conversation. Where it is needed in the local language, it should be done. Where we need to leverage on technology, should be done. Where it should be roundtable discussion, it should be done. And I think people learn in terms of peer learning. Once we have table discussions, is very good. Once you have policy at the other end, you have people share their experience, share some of their knowledge that they have. It enriches the conversation and education. We have always believed that learning is the industrial form or the Prussian model of education. When I say Prussian model, the teacher stands, teach students who are there, and then that factory level shouldn't be implemented in education. It can work in a certain context, but then for us to get a wider audience, we need to break away from that and see how we can localize, adapt, and adopt the climate education within that context. Then I'm also saying that in a classroom setting, it's very important to capitalize on some simulation and games-based learning. Children and certain adults are very interested in having game-based learning and or gamification. That's how in some of these contexts works best. If we learn by games, it's very easy. So for example, we know Ludo, right? The local Ludo. The local Ludo can be contextualized in a climate environment where the pictures on the board will be climate, the boxes can be represented by something else. And once you do that, you inform the public about this climate education, making it very sensible to even the average person, just like the snake game. When you have Ludo, the back of it, it's snake game. But then we can remodify if we have people that are very interested in rethinking and redoing some of this stuff, we can actually have this pro-environmental behavior infused in some of these game-based learning. And there are countless examples of that. And I worked with CDKN, which is Climate Development Knowledge Network, on developing some of these games that they use in senior high school. And they've really done good job when it comes to game-based learning within the context, within the local context as well. The simulations also come in that, where we can play along those who have sophisticated machines and all to be able to learn. So we should just look at the audience, look at our approach, and then methodology. And for me, I think if we're able to go through that, we can really inform the public as well. Lastly, in some of the countries that we have, even on the buses, they use their buses to educate in their local languages.
Yes.
We should also look at our local languages, the various things that we are studying, the research that have been done. How can they be broken down? Apart from the long text, can it be in radio shows? Can it be on TVs? Can some of these solutions be heard? These are practical ways of informing the public. So I think this is the best approach and the best way to go about it.
Yes, thank you so much, Maxwell, for that contribution. Nia, I would like to know how can we better align youth development programs with sustainable urban planning and climate resilience efforts?
Yeah, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, how can we better align youth development programs with sustainable urban planning and climate resilience efforts?
Yeah, that looks like a cheesy question, but well, in terms of aligning youth development with sustainable initiatives, I think that again, I mean, we need more research, and I think of how we can, for example, sponsor young people who are doing research related to urban development. Interestingly, myself, I've been trying to look at what opportunities exist in terms of youth engagement to address urban sustainability issues in Africa. And you only find, examples of such opportunities in Cape Town. And so I think of research. We need to support young people who are doing research related to the urban. Again, ties to some of the questions we've tried to answer in the last sessions. How do we scale up innovation? How do we make sure that the development approach related to urban development is youth-centered? It promotes things that young people would find relevant, like having clean urban spaces for their mental health, which is one of the intersectoral issues that come up in the conversation of youth development. So yeah, these are things that I think of. And if we are able to address the research challenge, address innovation, scale up innovation, and making sure that policies young people centered and address young people needs to be able to address issues related to urban development.
Thank you so much, Nee. This question goes to all the panelists. I would like to know, in your opinion, what are the most critical areas that we think that climate action intersects with gender equality and youth empowerment? This to all the panelists, so anybody can go. Should I repeat the question? Yes. In your opinion, what are the most critical areas where climate action intersects with gender equality and youth empowerment? Yeah, I see you first. Do you want to go?
No, Gloria will go first.
Okay, Gloria. You're muted.
No, you just put me on the spot. Wow. The intersection between climate action or climate change, gender equality, and youth empowerment, I think it still comes back to sustainable development, really. because in this agenda is where you find everyone of these. First of this question has like two sides, where the actors involved, which is the gender-based vulnerable people who are vulnerable involved, youth, gender, and all of that. And then you have the problem, climate change, and then the climate action bit. So I think I find the intersection point being more of the sustainable development. When you look at gender, example, women, and when you look at young people, these people are at the front lines of climate change. You know, when we talk about climate change, these people experience it the most. However, these people are still the same people who have what it takes to drive action. Women are one of the most influential people you can find in the homes and outside the homes. If you want people to be the carrier of messages, the carrier of an agenda, you know, to transmit that, women are the right people to do this. Young people as well, the vibrancy, the skills, the innovativeness, you know, and all of that. These people are still the same people to drive the action. So it is, I think overall, what I would say is that it's really important that we empower these people to ensure that the whole sustainability or sustainable development agenda is what's achievable by promoting like inclusion, because if you involve them, you are promoting inclusion. If you involve them, you are promoting equity, you know, which is very, very important. If you involve them, you are promoting effective action. You know, these are very active force of the population across the continents, not just in Ghana like this. You have 50%, 57% of our population being young people. Imagine all of these young people being well empowered in the right direction to understand some of these basic things we've spoken about on this call, to help them relate with it personally and beyond the personal scope, to understand how this plays out nationally and how this plays out continentally plus globally. I think we will go a long way in promoting sustainability. So I find the intersecting point being sustainable development. When you bring all of these bits and pieces together, that is what happens. We are able to promote the sustainability agenda. So yeah, I would say that it's very important that these particular groups of people are empowered, like what we have said already on the call, and in the right direction to be able to drive climate action and to be able to drive sustainability at large. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And this question is also to all the panelists, but I'll direct it to Madina first. What role do you think that conferences like the upcoming one, the African Youth Gender and Climate Conference, and COP, at the moment COP29, what role do you think they are playing in shaping the climate agenda? Because I've spoken to some people and they think it's just like a talk show. People just go and talk. So with you, I'm sure all of us here have been part of COP29, and even with our climate conference coming up, what role do you think these conversations or these kind of programs or conferences shape in this climate action agenda? I'll start with Madina and then anybody else can take up the question.
Okay, thank you. First, I would start by saying before we participate in the pre-COPs, the COP itself, and the post-COP, as young people, we should know our area of focus, because COP is, a lot of things are happening at COP. So one of the ways to make sure that people don't see COP as a talk show is if a person knows exactly what he or she is going to do at the COP. What is your area of focus? I am focusing maybe on forest conservation. So I know that when I am attending a pre-COP session or the COP session, I know I have to make sure I am looking for sessions or opportunities to speak more about forest conservation. And in order to make sure that people also see the value of these meetings that are happening, I would say what can be done from what I've seen during the pre-COPs events that are happening, I feel like people generalize it. You find it's a one-day activity or maybe a one-day event and attend the pre-COP. For example, last week we had the last pre-COP 29 in Tanzania, and it was just a one-day event where people were gathered there. I feel like it is impossible for people to be able to share a lot on different key themes. So people will just generalize it and take COP as a single thing, but it is very diverse. There's about finance, there's youth, there's education, there's children. So in order to make sure that people don't see COP as a talk show, they need to know what do they want to achieve from the COP, what is their area of focus, and also after attending COP, what are they willing to do to bring back to their country to not only benefit the people who funded them, maybe an organization, but the main people who we went to represent at the COP, which is the local community back in our country.
Thank you. Is Maxwell there? Okay. Nee, I'd like to ask, what role do you think that these conferences and workshops or COP play in achieving the climate agenda? I know Madina has stated that you need to go there prepared and all of that, but those who don't have the opportunity to go there, they would like to know what role does these things, like they sometimes see it as we just go and talk. But what role do you think these conferences and COP 29 and all of that, how does it play in achieving climate action or addressing the climate change agenda?
Yeah, I mean, recently I saw someone who is trying to lead a petition that government does not go to COP. Whereas I agree that traveling to COP usually is contradictory because, you know, the transport industry is one of the highest contributors to climate change, and a number of people go to COP. And so, like, obviously, you can't say you are solving climate issues and contributing to it. But the COP is very important. And anyone who does not understand COP would say that it's not relevant to be at COP. And I say this for two reasons. I worked in climate, Maxwell and I, SYND, for a long time. And I feel like the depth of my experience in climate only started because I was at COP27. It gave me a genuine picture of where the discussion starts from. So you go for meetings focused on, you know, adaptation, finance. You go for meetings focused on NDC. When the global stocktake started around COP27, I was in a discussion. So, you know, when I'm making advocacy or doing any work related to mitigation action, there's a direct, you know, correlation between the COP policy process and the work that I do. So it's very relevant. And I do think that anybody who is working in climate, given the advice that Madina gave on having a thematic area, if you have a thematic area and you are focused on a particular area, it will be good to go to COP and have the depth. Unfortunately, like, the process is really difficult. You need a badge, which you are likely to only get from government. And if you don't have a good civil society like network, you won't be able to be on a badge of civil society. And then you have to look for funding. It's really stressful. And as an activist, I've decided I wouldn't go through that process of having to chase for all of these things. I would rather do work, and then people who find it relevant to be in these meetings would definitely invite me to be there. So that's what, like, young people, you should aspire to, but you should also not put yourself through stress of having to be at COP. But it's relevant and it's important. Whilst you can't go if you do not get the opportunity.
I think your network. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I just got a notification data. But yeah, you can write about how you want the policy on cities, for example, the multi-level action on climate, which is a CHAMP, it's a policy on cities under the COP process. So how do you write about it so that you're able to influence the process? Look for micro opportunities so that you're able to be part of the COP process. And then it's all part of making an impact. Yeah, so that's it from my end.
Thank you so much. Gloria and Maxwell, do you have any submission on that?
Yeah, I'll just add something so that Maxwell come in. Ninoy has said, has touched on the key or important areas. COP is, it feels very long and, like a waste of time. It feels that way, but it's very important that especially we as Africans are in those rooms, especially those decision-making rooms. We need our government officials, again, who have like the right drive, to be in the rooms to speak for us, to ensure that some of these agenda that is being driven globally aligns in our favor, especially Africans, because we are always at the downside of things. And if we are not there, we see this as talk shop or talk show, people shouldn't be there, then people will decide our future for us. And you can imagine what this means to us down here. People who don't even know that things like these are going on. They don't know, but they are always at the receiving end of, the impact of some of these things. So it's very important that we are there. And personally, I have also experienced like a great shift in my career or my journey as an environmentalist since I started going for COP, even in my advocacy efforts, even in building networks that can help expand the scope of impact, as a young person within the space. It's been very important in the journey. Of course, people will talk for long because you have over 100 countries coming together with different backgrounds and understanding about life. So it would definitely be back and forth until we realign, so people should see the need for participation in some of these things. But again, don't stress yourself, like Ninoy said. Myself, like this, I've been privy to like just focus on my work down in Ghana. And then some of these things have led to my participation at COP being fully funded and all of that. You have to just focus on building yourself and creating relevance for yourself so that a seat is created in such spaces for you to advocate for the right policies, especially for people at the grassroots. Madina is doing a great job at the grassroots. I love that she mentioned that is where you can really find information and all of the practical solutions. And that is really what I also believe in. So yeah, I think that COP is important. And it's really good that Anijie is doing Road to COP and then like other pre-COP engagements, preparing and psyching people for this year's upcoming COP. One last thing I'll say is that this year's COP is focusing on climate finance, agriculture, and I'm really excited about especially these two things. There are other areas, but these two really stands out for me and really informs me of how people are becoming conscious about the food they eat, not just eating it, not just producing it, but the processes it goes through, the politics involved, all of the things that comes when it comes to our food system. And honestly, you all eat here, so if there's any problem with our food, there's a problem with you and your body. And that means you may either not live to see the change you want to see in the world. So it's really exciting. And I think this is a good drive for us to march into those rooms and ensure that some practices like agroecology and some other sustainable agroforestry, like Madina mentioned, are all like adopted as some drivers of climate action within the food system. Thank you.
I'd like to ask Maxwell, so someone is listening now and saying that I've seen all of you young leaders involved in climate advocacy. You get to travel to COP to have your voice heard. You get being invited to platforms like these. And I want to start something, but where do I start from? What advice would you give to such a person? Is there like a roadmap to follow? Is there any strategy they can start taking or any initiative? So Maxwell, please.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Maud. So one of the things that I tell people is my strategy may not be the same strategy that will work for you. But one thing I said yesterday on a platform was that what do you have in your hands? It's very important. What do you have in your hands? You can only start with the things that you have. You can't start with the things that you don't have. It could be your knowledge base, which is very important. I was able to do what I'm doing because I was informed about some of these things, and then I was able to identify the gaps. I was able to know the problems, and I was able to also transfer knowledge. So for me, I think the best thing that it's cross-cutting where to start from is to first get interested, get to read and get informed, read wide about some of these topics that we are talking about. Start taking initiatives, local initiatives on some of the issues that you come up with. It might not be a very big initiative, but something very small. And then also, I think in as much as we have passion, passion comes with a plan.
Yes.
As much as you have a passion, you should have a plan to be able to execute whatever you want to do. Passion alone doesn't drive anything, but then with a plan and hard work, I think you can come up with your own unique strategy and to achieve. There are a lot of things Ninoy has interest in that I don't have any interest in. But then there is an intersection at a point in time when we begin to talk. We are able to see gaps within our scope. Gloria is in food systems, but I've worked with Gloria on a number of other topical issues. When there are certain things Gloria needs, she comes to me. When there is something I also need, I go to her. You can't do it all. So you appreciate those who are already there, those who have knowledge base in it. And then you also, as you do that, you begin to widen your knowledge base. And it's just like a pyramid. When you have a very wide base, what happens at the top? So it's very important. Once you have that knowledge base, you can build on it and then do some of the things we are doing now. We never planned it. But then because we have that knowledge base, it helps us to be able to, work within some of these spaces. So that's what I'll tell.
Wow, thank you so much. I think you got muted at the end, but thank you so much to you all. I believe that we can also take advantage of sessions like these. You don't have to necessarily wait to get a bigger platform. You can start with what you have, like Maxwell said. If go online, do research, attend virtual events or conferences like the upcoming one, African New Gender and Climate Conference, ask questions. Because I believe that as young people, if we don't take certain initiatives, we may never get that opportunity at their table. So we need to start also taking proactive steps. And we are far behind time. I really wish this conversation can go on and on, but I apologize if we are extended our time. I'd like to ask all panelists, is there any final words you could give? And what message would you like to convey to global leaders about the urgency of climate action, climate change, sustainable development in Africa, or anybody listening? Any final words? Gloria, I'll start with you first because I got a message you wanted to get off now.
Yes. First off, thank you again, Modeling, for putting this together. If there's any message I want to put out there, I think I want to emphasize on the fact that what we have here is a crisis. What the world is facing now is a major crisis, and we need a lot of political will, especially from our local leaders, national level here in Africa. We need a lot of political will to drive action in the right direction. So if we really want to address the issue of climate change, then we need political will, and we need a lot of collaborative efforts between government, civil societies, young people, women, and all vulnerable groups to drive action in the right direction. That's what I want to see in the nearest future, in the next 2 to 3 years. And in the long term, we can create an environment where young people thrive and all groups of people will thrive, both economically and socially, and also protect or work hand in hand with nature. Thank you very much.
So much, Gloria. Madina, do you have any final words?
Yes, thank you. I would like to say to the global leaders that children and youth have the right, and I believe they see it, because we even see in the representation in both national and international meetings how young people are devoted to make sure that they're taking part in them and sharing their views. We also see that there are even other youth who are funding themselves to attend those meetings. So what I would say is that don't get tired of investing in young people, and like, we should really emphasize global leaders to invest in young people, to make sure that they're equipping young people with the knowledge, the skills, and even finance to scale up the solutions that they have. Because some young people are not able to ensure that the solutions can reach a wider audience because of the lack of resources. Hence, it is very important to provide young people with the resources to make sure that they are able to reach many other young people, to reach out to a larger audience in their communities, and to ensure that we're scaling up climate action. So, Toby.
Thank you so much, Madina. Is Maxwell and Ninoy there? Yes, Maxwell.
Yeah, so my final words would be that in as much as we contribute less to climate change, we should all be, for the global south, we should all be in the fight to save our environment. And then as young people, let's take action. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Inspiring. Thank you so much, Ninoy.
Yeah, for me, my final words would be that, what I find when it comes to activism in Africa is a lot of us are focusing on the micro things. Advocacy is good, working with grassroots is good, but there are a lot of macro work that we can do, like understanding in depth the EHG industry, understanding the carbon market, defining what is true indigenous knowledge and promoting it. I think that we need to do a lot of macro work, because the way the geopolitics of our world is that the global north is heavily invested in some of these things, and we need to make sure that we match the kind of knowledge and power that they have in understanding some of these issues. So that would be my advice, that let's focus on the macro things, the ESG, the carbon markets. Even if we don't like it, it's better to arm ourselves in this, macro knowledge, so that we'll be able to better compete as a continent in the industry of climate. And also, I think it's important to be very patient with ourselves, because things take time. It didn't take 1 year for me to understand this climate space. It started from me doing development work 8 years ago, and it's transformed into an interest and developed into the climate, and we developed into focusing on cities and things to do with African epistemological knowledge and things like that. So let's give ourselves time. Let's be patient with ourselves. Let's take care of ourselves. People don't talk about the intersection between personal well-being and the planet's well-being. And we need to put that into consideration. So thank you very much for the invite. Really grateful for the opportunity to speak, and look forward to connecting.
Yes, thank you so much, Ni, and to all our panelists, Gloria, Madina, Maxwell. You are so inspiring, and this insightful conversation can be found on our YouTube channel, Anijie Global Foundation. And then this session is also recorded. We'll share to all attendees. It's quite unfortunate we couldn't address a lot of questions because we are far behind time, but we can also connect with these young leaders on their social media platforms. We'll update their details on YouTube, where you can just click to their LinkedIn profiles and have access to other information they would like to share. I'd like to say thank you to all of you also for taking time to listen to this conversation, and would like to invite you to the African Youth Gender and Climate Conference, which is happening on 29th of November at British Council in Accra, Ghana. My final words to us is that climate action, it takes time. Like Ni said, we need to take it easy with ourselves, but then also as young people, we have to understand that we need to take some of these initiatives. And when it comes to climate conversation, I think there should be no and tell. Climate conversation shouldn't be limited to specific people. Climate affects all of us, and we should all be involved in these conversations, from influencers to policymakers to educational researchers, to anybody, to a young person, to a woman, to a man, everybody. Climate conversations affect us. And to our leaders, we need to include more young people in these climate conversations. Let's not just invite them to take boxes at the table, but to give us the platform to also share our opinion. And if we feel like we don't have the necessary skills, build our capacities, provide us with funding. And as young people, we are ready to learn. We are ready to take initiatives to address climate change and the SDGs in general. So thank you all so much. And we'll connect at African Youth Gender Climate Conference. And it's bye for now.